Hello, everyone. This is Nicholas Capman with the FDA Group. Welcome to the Passionate Workforce podcast. I am the author of The Passionate Workforce, How to Create and Maintain Maximum Employee Engagement, which is an Amazon #1 bestseller. So if you haven't picked up a copy, please do so. Today on the podcast, I will be speaking with Ed Armstrong. Hey, Ed, how are you doing?
Doing quite well, Nicholas. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you for joining me today. So, before we jump into the topic, would you kindly introduce yourself?
Absolutely. As you noted, my name is Ed Armstrong. I currently serve as the Vice President of Quality for Vedanta Biosciences, a small biotech located in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I've been in quality for 30 years. I actually paid a student loan to earn a degree in quality control non-destructive testing, and I can't imagine doing anything else in this industry.
Okay, fantastic. That's great. So what are we talking about today?
Today, we're going to be talking about the importance for leaders in compliance to assure they're building the next generation of quality professionals.
Okay. And I think a lot of what we're going to be talking about today isn't going to be regulated just to quality and compliance professionals, but really kind of impact anybody outside of that space. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct, Nicholas. Once you get to the point of, senior manager, associate director, or director, part of your responsibility is developing that next generation of professionals. And how you cultivate and how you mentor those individuals is very critical for the success of your business.
Hmm.
I'm gonna steal a quote directly from your website if I can for a second.
Sure.
And I this one really resonated with me, and it's employee passion is critical to success. But as a business owner myself, it's a puzzle I've struggled to solve my entire career. And I think David Marlin had a very good point there. And as a leader, it's my job, it's my responsibility to help generate that passion and help build that next level of leadership.
Hmm. Now, this might sound like an obvious, an easy to answer question and something I shouldn't ask, but I will anyway. Why is it important for us to invest in the next generation of professionals?
When you look at companies that have come and gone, that have been successful and lost momentum, it comes down to what takes over after that successful leader goes.
Mm.
And for us, especially in the life science spaces, maintaining that high level of compliance, that high level of rigor, we need to be building that into our leaders as we're bringing them into the organization. And a leader doesn't always have to have the title manager. A leader can be your most senior laboratory specialist teaching that new scientist how to effectively execute a method. It can be your doc control person teaching the new doc control people how something gets filed because it's important.
Hmm.
Something that simple, but it's maintaining that consistent purpose and having that same consistent drive in the leadership models and keeping the business successful.
So I've seen a lot of businesses that started with a really strong executive team or leader, and that person moves on, generally into retirement or some other place, and then you kind of see the organization start to implode, for lack of a better phrase or term. Um, you know, so we can understand the value of investing in future leadership, but before we even get to that point, we have to think about why, how do we get those current leaders to make that a priority while they're working on everything else?
I'm going to pick on you for a second, Nicholas, because there was
Okay.
something you put in the book that, again, resonated really strongly with me. And you said, by taking steps to steer the collective mindset of a team towards passion, leaders can not only enhance the individual experience of their employees, but also significantly boost the collective output and innovation of their teams. Once you start that, much like a chain reaction in a nuclear reactor, much like, when you start that ball rolling down the hill, once you've created that collective mindset of a team towards passion, towards a collective vision of what the organization could be, but also as a leader being open to adjusting that trajectory based on where the team is also seeing you go, that's how you avoid that implosion when that person retires or when that person gets pulled away to another company to go do what they've done for you and make it just as successful over around the corner.
Hmm.
It's building that collective mindset where everybody has a voice and everybody can share in the passion and the success of the organization.
Hmm. Good point. Um, so what would you say? So we understand why it's important to invest in future leadership. We understand that if you don't, do that, then there's risks of the organization kind of imploding. So let's talk about the initial steps. If we understand that our executive team leadership is going to be kind of moving on at some period of time, and if we have, but we really want to be intentional about developing, because there's development of our team just as a way of continuous improvement. But now we're actually talking about investing in them to become that next, generation of future leaders as the current generation exits. So what would you say are kind of the initial steps about being intentional about developing a system, a program, a set of processes that will allow for that to occur?
So, two parts to that, Nicholas. And the first one being is transparency. As a leader, you need to be as transparent as you can be. What I tell my team all the time, especially in team meetings and when there's uncertainty in the air, things like that, I'm going to tell you everything I can tell you, and you're going to know 100% of what I know and what I'm allowed to let you know. And you hold yourself to that accountability. You hold yourself to that pattern because you owe each of these individuals a responsibility to be as transparent as you can.
Mm.
One of the simple things I do in my organizations is, and I only started this in the last 15-ish years of my career, is I put together a career ladder for my department.
Mm.
Here's all the different roles that we have available to you. What do you want to do? Let's build this together. Where
Mm.
do you see yourself? If you see
Mm.
yourself as a leader, we're going to go this path. If you see yourself as a high functioning individual contributor, we're going to go that direction.
Mm.
But what it does is it creates that shared responsibility between the two of you to help build that, to build
Mm.
that career and to figure out where they really fit in that leadership. The second part of that is hold yourself accountable to their development. Development is a two-way street. You can't sit down and write a development plan for someone, right? My boss can't come to me and say, okay, Edward, here's your development plan. Let's get started on Tuesday. We have to have a collective conversation. I have to take ownership of that development plan and I have to execute it and be accountable to them to say, where are we? And
Mm.
they have to be accountable to me by helping guide me in that path. One
Mm.
of the best leaders I ever had, Nicholas, was even if I made a decision or when I would make a decision, whether the decision was right, wrong, or indifferent, she would sit me down and say, okay, Ed, this is what I want you to do differently next time. Or next time we face this problem, I want you to think about it this way. Or I want you to consider this approach. What that did is that began early on sowing the seeds of what it really meant to be a leader and having that transparency and that guidance that even if we did the right thing, there still might be a better way to do it next time.
Yeah. The thing that kind of jumps out at me is I think some leaders are a little afraid and hesitant to develop a career development plan, and I'll tell you why. Is sometimes the size and scale of an organization doesn't allow for a ton of opportunity beyond what that organization is going to allow for. And so you run the risk of losing that employee, right? Here's the good news is that's going to happen anyway, right? So you can either help them develop toward that next level and be a pivotal part in that person's career development. And here's the key, know as they're moving on their way out, because we've all, unfortunately got the 2 week resignation. And that can put a lot of pressure in terms of, oh my God, how are we going to backfill it? So developing a career development path for each of these people, yes, it might illuminate that their path in 2, 3, 5 years isn't at your current organization, but it allows you to develop a trusted partner outside of the organization and have the time and support in order to backfill that role with the correct person as that person transitions into their next role. Have you had any experience with that or seen anything to that effect?
Absolutely. And I have this conversation with folks when we're working on their development plans is, I've had people stay in the same company with me. I've had people promote up and leave the company before I leave it. I was faced with this 4 roles ago, previous company that I worked for. I had hit a ceiling. I had grown as far as I was going to be able to grow. And what I noticed though, more importantly, was I was truncating the careers of those who worked with me. The team that I helped build, that I had put trust into, I was maxing out their potential because I couldn't move on.
Mm,
So that meant that I had to leave. But in that leaving, what I did is I created another few steps for those that had worked with me and that I've been already developing.
mm,
That's very critical in this role that we have in developing that next generation. And in building somebody's career plan, you want to build it for them, not just for you, not just for your company.
mm,
It's a bonus, right? You know, it's a bonus if they stay with the company,
mm,
but now you're getting that voice out to somebody else. Let's say
mm.
they go to a supplier or they go to another partner organization. Now you have that relationship already established and you can create a stronger tie in that situation.
Yeah, a lot of what I talk about now is paradoxes. There's a lot of like, I can't get stronger if I don't lift heavy things. Won't have a relationship with God if I don't seek Him. And there's all of these different kind of paradoxes that have kind of presented themselves to me. And to kind of go back to my earlier point, if their future is outside of the business, by you not illuminating that fact, it's going to happen anyway. So
Right.
now, so let's talk about the benefits of what can be gained from a personal standpoint when you help people illuminate that path. First of all, I think we're a lot focused on the tangible outcomes of what happens versus what's happening internal with us, right? And when it comes to all of the things that make us happy, whether it's love, friendships, work, leisure, health, helping people brings us a sense of satisfaction. And so you're going to improve your quality of life by helping those other people. And as cliche as it might sound, if you put yourself in that spot, you'll actually notice that you grow as an individual, right? So there's that benefit. There's what we've talked about several times, which is it's going to happen anyway, so you might as well be part of it. Another benefit is that if their future is in the organization, great. If it's not in the organization, now you have an ally that's outside of the organization. And for anybody that works in an industry like you and I do, that's as it's really big, but actually it's really small and it's
Yeah.
very incestuous. People go in and out of organizations and back and forth toward people that they've worked with over and over again. And you want to be able to develop a reputation that people are going to say, hey, I remember that person. They really helped me out. That'll help them be an ally for you in terms of recruiting people, speaking
Yeah.
good about you and your organization. And lastly, the point I wanted to mention is that um, what you're doing directly with that individual, there are people on the periphery that are seeing and hearing that. So what's the message that's being heard from the people in the organization as they see you develop that person? It's going to show that you're genuine, you're authentic, that you care, and that this is not a lot of smoke and mirrors, and this is something that is going to increase my passion for the organization because I can see that this leadership is not putting a blind eye to the rest of the company, but really truly investing in the development of that force. Um,
100%. Couldn't
yeah.
say it any better, Nicholas.
Um, so let's get back to the nuts and bolts of it. So I am a leader. I know that it's a benefit for me to develop the next generation of leaders. One of the important parts is transfer of critical knowledge. and skills. So, can you comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that's being driven again by our industry is that knowledge management is, helping people understand everything that you understand and you understand everything that they understand as well. You know, for us as leaders to hold back information because it's important that I am the only one with this little bit of information is the antithesis of what we're trying to build, right?
Mm,
It's that open transparency. It's that I'm here to help you learn what you don't know. And as your leader, I need you to also teach me at the same time of the things that I may not understand.
mhm,
A great example is I had the lucky opportunity to hire somebody in my last company who came from an API manufacturer. It's an area of weakness for me. They also happen to come with a great QC background, another weakness of mine.
mhm,
I was able to leverage that experience of that individual as I'm developing them from an individual contributor to an associate director role in 4 years. At the same time, I'm gaining this wealth of knowledge from that individual. And that was critical for my development as well, because I was then able to take that information and share that out with a broader organization.
mhm.
And now fast forward, I get a message from this individual who's now at another company that said, "Oh, I came into my company and there was this process. And I stopped it because I learned from you that that's not okay with the regulations."
Mhm.
And I'm all about, what do the regulations say? Go to the regulations, quote the regulation. Are we compliant? Can we follow our procedure? So in that case, that knowledge sharing, that knowledge management served two people and made us stronger. And now each of us have gone different directions, and we're still sharing that same passion and that same education and that same leadership style out further.
That's a great point. Um, I want to move into a word that that you had mentioned, and I think I had mentioned too, which is an interesting topic, which is transparency, right? Everybody will say, I'm transparent, we need transparency, things of that nature. And the two things can be true at the same time. There are certain topics that should be held in confidence, and there is other information that sometimes is held in confidence to the detriment of that organization, right? Um, One of the things that I think is important for people to consider when it comes to the concept of transparency is we all are creating stories in our head. So, about how is the business going? How is this relationship going? How is whatever happening? How is it going? And my experience has led me to believe that when other people don't have the transparency about whatever that situation is, the story that they develop 9 times out of 10 is worse than what is actually the real case, right? That
Yeah.
person's, our management's making way too much money, or everybody's getting fired, or it's usually very extreme in terms of the stories that they generate. So, can you speak a little bit to transparency and kind of how do we balance transparency and confidence?
And and that's a really good question, Nicholas, because this is something I've struggled with in my entire career. Is, we all have that point of, I can't wait to be in those meetings where decisions get made so I know what's going on and I can share with everybody, to, I really want to share this, but I can't.
Mm,
So the way in which I've done that with my teams is I just tell them point blank, I will tell you exactly what I'm okay to tell you, but understand there are certain things I'm not allowed to talk about right now.
mm,
But I will tell you everything that I can,
mhm.
everything that I know that you can know. You're going to know that 100%, and you're going to know that 100% of the time.
Is there a mechanism or a strategy that you use, a tactic that helps delineate what should be transparent and what should be held in confidence? What is your rule of thumb?
Never change who you are.
Mm-hmm.
In my younger career, I would never wear this shirt, number one.
Mm-hmm.
But younger in my career, it was more about what was the perception of what I knew and what I didn't know. And And, uh, did I look like the leader?
Hmm.
And what I found was that that was very disingenuous. That didn't build passion in the team because their perspective is, okay, what's in it for Ed, not what's in it for me. By doing everything in my career, doing everything day in and day out is transparency. Simple things. I told you earlier, 30 years in quality. I've been through 211, left, right, forward, and backwards 100 times. But the fact that I openly admit to my team and to my organization, I don't memorize 211. I memorize where my link to 211 is, and I go look in there.
Mm.
And I come back from the source. By being genuine, when I'm telling you face to face, eye to eye, I'm as being transparent as I can be with you right now. Here's everything that you can know. You've built that level of trust with that individual that they're going to accept that. They
Mm.
may not like it. It may not stop the voices in their head telling them, oh no, this is bad news,
Mm.
or ooh, this is great news and it's really bad news. You're never going to stop that. But you've given them the facts and the truth of where
Mm.
it is.
Yeah.
In a previous company, we were at the last minute told of an all hands meeting. And one of the younger junior people was nervous and they came to me and they said, what do you think this is about, Ed? I said, well, it's one of two things. We're either going to take the two different divisions that exist in the Boston area, and we're going to combine them into one, and we're all going to go to one building, or we're going to find out that, one or more of the divisions is going away, or we're going to just find out where we are from a corporate perspective. So there's three things that could be the truth here.
Mm. Mm.
And that's exactly what I knew.
Yeah.
Well, along with this individual, I found out the next morning, yes, we're getting a new building, but only one division is moving there because the other division is getting closed, our division. And I looked at them and I said, I'm sorry if I built your hopes up with what I said the other day. And what they said to me was, no, you were as transparent as you could be because you knew what you knew, and I knew what you knew. And it put me at ease because I knew you and I were looking at the same thing. I was a
Mm.
manager, they were an individual contributor.
Mm.
But that simple moment of genuine, here's what I think, spoke volumes to that individual.
Mm. Yeah. That's a good point. I think another thing, because generally where people are hesitant to bring transparency to its forefront is when there's bad news. And I would say that, the truth will set you free, um, as long as there's hope,
Yeah.
right? And so if we're talking about closing divisions, right? Um, you may be hesitant to bring that fact up, but the fact that you treated your audience like the adults that they are, and yes, people will jump ship, and things will happen, but the alternative, I would argue, is much worse, in which case they're creating stories that are much worse, and you're going to actually have more people fleeing the ship. And the truth will set you free where there's hope, which is we might be able to save the division, or you know we're going to close this division, and we've got 3 months, and we need guys to stick with us so that we can decommission it, and
Yep.
um, you know, we're going to help you in setting up that next, part of your career. They're going to appreciate that. They're going to remember that. It speaks to the other people, just like we've talked about. I would argue that the line where there's a separation between confidence and transparency is when it deals with a very specific person or a group of people, where the audience has no impact on that. So it could be an employment issue, it could be a conflict, and those really should be dealt in private, and shouldn't be they should be held in confidence. But I think there should be really a push to try to promote transparency as much as possible.
And to that
Um,
point, though, Nicholas, though, even when you're having those one-on-one conversations, yes, let's say it's a performance issue, and you've pulled that person aside, and you're going to have a conversation with them privately. That private
I mean, other
conversation,
people.
right?
I'm not going to
Well,
speak to Ed about what
oh,
my issue was with Bill.
no, yeah, you don't want to do that.
Right.
But when I have that conversation with Bill, I want to be transparent with him. I want to
Sure.
help encourage him. Here are the things that we can do to be better. Here are the things that we need to change and
Oh
improve
yeah,
upon.
that's a
And
must.
guess what? We're going to stand shoulder to shoulder and we're going to do this together.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and I guess to that point, that's a great segue into the next thing I want to talk about, which is the role of mentorship and training in preparing that next generation of professionals for leadership.
Yeah.
So, can you kind of kick that off?
So I'm going to pull another quote. When passion fuels us, we're not just employees, we become innovators, caretakers of quality, and positive forces within our teams. The team needs to be as passionate as their leader, and their leader needs to emulate that passion. So when you're meeting with your team needs to see what's really going on and where your concerns are, where your joys are, where your passions are. When you're going through the corporate goals with your team, make it apparent that those are your goals too, that you're just as accountable to them as they are, as the leadership is. The board's looking down all the way through the organization to see where you are with that. Being that open and being that, again, transparent helps foster that conversation. We've all heard the adage, have an open door policy, be a walk around manager, ask questions. That's part of it. That's the surface part of it. But sitting with somebody and saying, okay, where are you? How are you doing today? Where are you feeling in your career right now? And then if they say, hey, I've got a real passion for this, and that individual doesn't sit in the company with you, connect them with somebody on your LinkedIn. I did this with a team member. They're interested in regulatory affairs. I connected them with probably one of the best regulatory affairs professionals I've ever worked with outside the company. They're still with the company I'm in, but they have another outlet because they've been given that opportunity to develop with somebody that's not just their boss or their leader, but somebody else who's a leader in the industry.
Mm,
It's giving people that opportunity not just go to the next ASQ class or the next SQA class or whatever. It's taking a personal interest in watching them develop. And it's not just using words to say it. It's showing effort and action where it's important as well.
hmm Now, from a more tactical and tangible perspective, what are some of the do's and don'ts you would say as it pertains to mentorship and training? And specifically, I'm referring to if you're developing someone to replace you, or jump into that, executive boardroom. When should that begin? When should that fostering begin? How intense is the mentoring and the training? Has there been a situation where you think you're developing somebody for a role and then find out halfway through that maybe they're not the right fit if
Yeah.
if if you were really focused on moving them up? So can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, let me give you a real world example. 4 companies ago, I had a supervisor, manager come to me and say, hey, I just want to let you know I applied to this other opportunity within the company. I don't want to be a manager anymore. And I looked at him and said, well, I'd love to keep you in the department. What if I told you, no harm, no foul? I'll let you step back into an individual contributor role and we'll develop you that direction. We figured out you didn't want to be a leader. That's
hmm
okay. The important thing is we found it.
hmm
And we did. We moved that individual back in and they became a fantastic individual contributor again.
hmm
And all of their staff was very happy that they were an individual contributor again.
Yeah.
And then it became finding that right person to lead the organization after that.
hmm
So to go to that question is it's early. You want to have that conversation early. When you approach somebody and say, have you thought about being a leader? Or have you thought about this type of role? See where they really are within that. And can you develop it? Myself personally, at my last company, we needed to hire a head of quality. I went to my leadership at the time and said, gentlemen, with all due respect, you don't know what we need to hire for. Let me write the job description. Let me help with the interview process. You guys handle salary. You guys handle bonus. I will get you the right candidate. And in doing that, I helped establish the fact that I wasn't ready to be a head of quality yet, but I brought in probably one of the best mentors I've found this late in my career. And fast forward 3.5 years later, when they got promoted up to being the site head, completely taken out of quality, or made the site head, he had been taking that 3.5 years to finish off what gaps I had in being a site head of quality and brought me to where I was silently,
Hmm.
without fanfare, without without a hey, this is what's going to happen to you. This is the succession plan. And it worked organically.
Hmm.
There are other team members, and you need to measure that, where you need to sit down and show them this is the session plan. This is where you are. This is where you need to be. This is how we're going to get there. That's why I build that career ladder,
Hmm.
is so that you can help somebody get through that. I have mentored people into other management roles. I've mentored people into directorship roles. I have mentored people into other individual contributor roles that didn't want to be leaders. And that's
Hmm.
okay as well, because guess what? You can be just as important leader as an individual contributor as a vice president.
Hmm.
Recently, I was working with a mentee who was looking for that next career jump for themselves. And every time they'd come to me with a job opportunity that was before him, I'd go, but that's not what you're looking for. I know, but I gotta build a pay. Right. But what's more important? The paycheck, the career, or what you're wanting in your passion?
Hmm.
Getting them to remember that this is what I want to do.
Hmm.
A recent trick that I've done to help do that at a tactical level, write your job description. Don't write your job description, Nicholas. Don't tell me, my name is Nicholas. I'm CEO of one of the best consulting firms out there, blah, blah,
Hmm.
blah, blah. Right? Write that job description. What is your next role? What is your next opportunity? What is your next job? And from that, you can take that simple concept and build out what are those tactical things you need to learn? What are those tactical gaps you have? And what are those things that you and your manager or you and a mentor can build together, or a coworker?
Hmm.
Hey, I've got this really great project that Ed gave me, and I'd really like you to help me figure out what we need to do because I'm a little weak here.
Hmm.
And now what you have is you have two people working on development together within the same team.
Hmm. I have a question. So, as we're thinking about training and mentoring, would you say that in training and mentoring somebody for a leadership position, is it time that you cut out of their workday, or is it blended into their workday? Is it easy to delineate that what you're doing is training and mentoring them because we've blocked out a specific time and it's very intentional? Or is it blended in throughout all of your interactions? And how does that look different from someone that you're not necessarily fostering toward a leadership role, but you're just trying to develop them for continuous improvement?
I've seen it work both ways, Nicholas. Myself personally, what works best for me is blending it into their day-to-day work life, right? It's not just saying, okay, here's 2 hours, we're going to talk about your development. But what you miss there is, how did you apply it? What did you learn from that? Okay, we tried it here. How did that work? To me, it's more important that it's just part of your everyday method and opportunity. When we think about training, think about it from a GMP perspective. You have to go to GMP training, and you're going to sit in a room and you're going
Right.
to learn the GMPs again.
Exactly.
That's not mentorship. That's not
Mm.
guiding. That's not learning. That's not educating. That's giving a set of facts, measuring your attention to the set of facts you were just given,
Mm.
and determining a pass or fail.
Mm.
Career development is not a pass fail. You
Mm.
have pass or fail moments. You have moments you succeed, and you have moments you fail, but it's not carved out between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m.
Right.
It is, it's 4:30 in the afternoon. We're stock out at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. We need this data reviewed, and
Mm.
we need determination if we're going to be able to release this material.
Mm.
That we're not blocking out time. We're
Yeah.
rallying a team together. We're looking at someone saying, okay, this is your call. What do we stand?
Yeah. Yeah.
Here are the facts. How
You
are you
know,
feeling? Are you comfortable?
yeah.
And it's helping them understand what that situation means.
As you're talking, one of the things that kind of just jumped out at me that seems like it would be a really awesome opportunity to develop somebody for leadership is in those moments where you're involved in something that is unusual about your role where it's high stress, critical, or something to that effect, having the wherewithal to say, you know what, maybe I should bring this person in so they can see what we're dealing with, and I can show them my train of thought as I'm attacking this issue.
Yep. And I've done that a number of times in my career, and it's worked really well.
Mm,
And the really beautiful part, one of the things that happens organically, Nicholas, that I just love in those types of situations is when the team member you brought in to learn from you goes, wait a minute, hold on a second. Per procedure XYZ, I really think we should do it this way. Is that okay? The fact that they feel empowered that even though they're there side by side with you learning, that they can still come back with information input,
mm,
that it's not just rote. It's not sitting in training. It's sitting in an opportunity to learn, but also ask questions and show also what you've learned. It sounds goofy, Nicholas, but I was doing a mock pre-approval inspection at a company. My vice president of quality took a week off. Why did they do that? They did that to prove to me that they had that level of trust in me that I could go and do that.
mm.
Now, we still reviewed the outcome together. He still gave me some great advice on how to handle it better the next time. But that simple thing of, you got this, even though he wasn't certain if I had it or not, but yet he had that faith in that trust.
Mm.
And that's built through that opportunities of education and mentorship that happens at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in front of the coffee machine as you're running in between meetings and you blurt out an issue you're having and you collectively work together to find that solution. And
Yeah,
then you're off to the next one.
yeah, that's a great point. Um, as we are developing, mentoring, training, um, I want to figure out how do we measure our success. Now, if they were to jump into that role and I could fast forward 6 months down the road and see that they're succeeding, obviously that's the final score for the exam. But as we're building toward that end state, how do we as leaders measure ourselves in terms of the effectiveness of what we're doing in order to build up this next generation of leaders?
That is the question I wish I had an answer for, Nicholas.
Mm,
I've had people that I was positive I failed them as a leader,
mm,
and they've come back to me later in life and said, you know what, that was perfect because here's what it did for me now.
mm,
Um, the other day I was just having thoughts about my very first head of quality I worked with at my very first company out of college.
mm,
And the lessons they taught me in 1994 and 1995, I carry to this day and I use them. When I'm doing a simple Gemba walk, or I'm doing a walkthrough of my warehouse looking for what doesn't look right, that stuff that individual taught me. Now they're off enjoying life, hopefully by now retirement. But it's those little things that I do today that matter.
mm,
So we may not know that,
mm,
Nicholas. We may never know that we affected Bob in this way.
mm,
But we may see Bob at a national conference giving a keynote address on GMP or GCP or something that we've helped teach them. And we can go, there I am.
mm. Yeah. One of the things I was just thinking of is I think there's two categories. I think there's learning and there's growth. And I'm spitballing here, but I'll kind of tell you what I'm thinking. I'm thinking back to when I got my first management position, which I failed at. Ended up getting demoted. I didn't have what I would call the growth. This was not something simple as, oh, you just do this next time, do that next time. Here's something that you can read that will help you kind of not go through this. I was not mature enough at that point in time, both physiologically and mentally, um, and professionally, to be able to build on that leadership level. And so it really I think that was the correct decision by my management to say, we made it an attempt with Nick, it didn't work out. We're going to bring him back into an individual contributor role and we're going to bring somebody else in. That made sense. So I guess as we're developing these leaders, we have to say, do they have the maturity to be able to digest the information that we're providing to them as we're fostering them toward this role, and that they'll be able to learn and understand and develop into that? Or, you know, do they, I would say they don't GWC it. They don't get it. They don't want it necessarily. They don't have the capacity to do it.
Yeah.
And so at that point, of course, then again, we might not have developed them to begin with if we didn't already know that they got it, wanted it, and had the capacity to do it. But in an instance where maybe we made the, mistake of saying, I think this is the right person, but I think once you kind of run into an opportunity for learning where you say, this is not just something where I need to, instruct them and educate them on a tactic or a strategy that they can then put into their toolbox and grow from there. But really, maybe they're just not, this isn't the right time for them. It doesn't mean it won't be the right time for them in 5, 10 years as they grow. But I think that's one thing that we can do is we're developing leaders, is if we do make that decision to try to develop somebody for a leadership role, understanding when we hit those points of conflict and friction, is this simply just something I need to educate them on and will grow? Or is there something a little bit more systemic in the sense that they're not ready for that, that time? So those are my two thoughts.
No, I can't disagree with your thoughts, Nicholas. It's very much, and again, too, I'm in the same boat.
Mm,
At one point in my career, I had reached what I thought was the pinnacle. I blew a major project. My boss was left with egg on his face. He was left embarrassed. He had no choice but to demote me because I had failed.
mm,
But I reached a point of arrogance where I thought, I didn't really fail. I just made a mistake. It's no big deal.
mm,
No, I had failed. They had no choice but to push me back to an individual contributor role.
mm,
And the lessons I learned there were so critical to me even today.
mm,
And, when I think back now at that, it made me a better leader today than I was when he demoted me.
mm. What it might have been is you got a nice big slice of humble pie, and that goes a long way.
It does.
When you think that you've made it and you're set and so on and so forth, and then you get that big dose of humble pie and you realize, oh, actually, I'm not who I thought I was.
Right.
That kind of takes the blinders off, and you say,
It
wow, there
does.
actually is a lot more growing to be
Yeah.
had here. So that's
And
really,
and what you learn from that is we all have a strength, a talent, and a passion. We all do for what we want to do, where we want to be. Our passion may not be our job. It's great when it is. That's in my world. But we all have that strength, that talent, that passion. Taking those reset moments like you did and like I did helps make us more passionate and make us better at where we really want to be in life.
hmm
You know, it helped me learn that I didn't need to wear a shirt and tie every day to prove that I was the one in charge
hmm
and to be more humble, to be more approachable, to be more transparent, and to be willing to admit when I didn't know what I didn't know. Far more important.
I want to ask you a question about this current state, this current period of time that we're in, right?
Yeah.
We're 5 years out from the pandemic. Um, we now have entered into the world of AI. I don't know what generation we're in anymore. I know it used to be the millennials, but I know we're past that. So I
Yeah.
think we're I don't know, alpha or something.
Gen Alpha is actually my grandson who's 11.
Oh, okay. So somewhere in between Gen Alpha and the millennials, I guess. Gen
Yeah.
Y, I think is what it is, right? Gen Y?
Gen Z.
Is it Gen Z? Okay.
Gen Z.
So as we're talking for the audience that's listening right now, we're working on developing and training this new leader of this new generation of leaders. with the current state,
Yep.
5 years out from COVID, AI, and this new generation of workers and professionals that we have, what would you say is true now in terms of developing and mentoring and training that maybe would not be true 5, 10, 15 years ago?
And that's a really great question, Nicholas. And especially when you look at our current workforce, you have everything from baby boomers to Generation X to millennials to Gen Z now, right? We've got four generations in the workforce. All four have different personality traits. All four have different approaches to technology, that sort of thing. The interesting thing for me is I'm learning Gen Z has this weird dichotomy in it between adoption of electronic and AI and not liking AI.
Mm,
That AI is actually less impactful and more risky than what we think it is.
mm,
So, recently I was asked, where does AI fit in GMP and GCP? And I said it's an evolution. The technology is revolutionary, but for us, it's an evolution.
mm,
And the same is true to your question, Nicholas, is we have to be constantly ready for that next evolution in technology, the next evolution in work-life balance or work life in general. When I think about my millennial team members and my Gen Z team members, they're very driven for development. They're very driven by a passion to move up, whether it be into leadership or a more senior position. Gen X, myself, more in, okay, I'm looking for a way out. How do I make sure everything's in place for that next person to step in? And boomers just want to know that they still bring value in a lot of ways and we're still listening to them,
mm,
that we're respecting what they bring to the table.
mhm,
How that individual and somebody else approaches AI, you need to build that program around so you can take from both ends of it,
mm.
you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, this has been an excellent podcast. I really appreciate your time and your insight and everything that you shared with us. Before we close, what would you like to leave the audience with?
I'm going to, again, come back to, I'm going to again come back to the very simple idea that we all are responsible for developing the careers of those around us as well as our own.
Hmm.
How we do that and taking care of each other is really important because no one got ahead in their career alone. There was always somebody either they're mentoring or they were menteeing somebody to bring them along. Remembering that we all collectively work together towards towards a common goal and solution.
Hmm. Awesome. Well, Ed, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And for everybody listening, as always, if you find conversations like this valuable, please share it with a colleague or your professional network. If you haven't already, subscribe to get updates of new episodes at thefdagroup.com/podcast and follow the FDA group on LinkedIn. Lastly, if you haven't gotten a copy of The Passionate Workforce, please do. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you all next time.